Hello and welcome to today's lesson. In our previous lesson, we discussed how we can be able to solve a quadratic equation using the null factor law and also proceeding by using factorization techniques. Today, we want to extend the knowledge of solving a quadratic equation by applying in solving area problems. So the work of today is application of quadratics equations to solve problems. So in the first case, we shall consider area problems. An illustration is presented on the board. That is, the rectangle has an area of 8 square centimeters and a length which is 2 centimeters more than its width. The rectangle has been sketched. So the length, dimension for the length is x plus 2, so that is length. And the dimension for width is x centimeters. The area of the rectangle is 8 square centimeters. Then in part A, using the formula length times width is equal to area, comma, write an equation. So we wish to write an equation connecting area and the length of the rectangle and width of the rectangle. So if we use the formula length times width is equal to area, we shall have L here represents length of the rectangle, then W represents the width of the rectangle. Then A represents the area of that particular rectangle. So in our case, we can substitute the dimensions for length, and the dimension for length is x plus 2. Then the dimension for width is x. Then the value for area is 8. 8 square centimeters. So at this point, we now expand the bracket. To expand the bracket means we open the bracket, and in this case, we take the first term, which is x, multiplied by x, and that gives us x squared. Then we have the second term, which is 2 multiplied by x, gives us plus 2x. Is equal to, on the right hand side, we have 8. Now at this point, we write this particular quadratic equation in the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. That means we are preparing our quadratic equation for solving. So in this case, we are supposed to collect 8 on to the left-hand side. So to eliminate 8 on the right-hand side, since it's positive, we subtract 8 from both sides. So we shall have so at this point, on the left-hand side, we shall remain with 8x squared plus 2x minus 8 on the right-hand side is 8 minus 8, which is 0. And that will be the required equation. Now, having obtained the equation, we now look at part B of that particular question. So in part B, now class, in this part B, we are required to solve our equation using the null factor law. So the equation is x squared plus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. So because this is a trinomial, we are supposed to split this middle term so that we have 4 terms. The 4 terms will assist us to carry out factorization by grouping. So in this case, we look for 2 numbers such that the product So in this case, we look for 2 numbers such that the product will be the A times C. So in this case, it's 1 times negative 8. So we look for 2 numbers such that the product is negative 8. So A here is 1, C is negative 8. So at this point, we are also supposed to find the sum. The sum of the 2 numbers must be equal to the coefficient of x, which is 2. So we look for those numbers by inspection. It's also called trial and error. So if we look for those numbers, we find two factors that when you multiply, you get -8. The first one is 1 times 8, where 1 is negative, 8 is positive. So for the sum to be positive, it means the larger factor must be positive, while the smaller one must be negative. Another one. The second one is -2 times 4. So you have noticed that when we take -2 times 4, the result is -8. When we add on adding -2x plus 4x gives us +2x, which is in line with the sum. So that means our two factors are -2 and 4. So there is no need for us to proceed and establish other factors. So we settle on the 2. So by inspection, factors for -8 are -2 and 4. Therefore, (2x) can be expressed as (2x) can be expressed as 4x minus 2x. So we shall express this middle term, 2x, using the factors that we have chosen, in this case, 4x and minus 2x. So our quadratic equation becomes x squared plus 4x minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. Now class, you'll discover that we have a total of 4 terms. The first one is x squared, second one is 4x, the third one is minus 2x, then the fourth term is -8 is equal to 0. So at this point, we can factorize by grouping. Now class, what is the common factor between the first term, x squared, and 4x? I believe you have discovered that the common factor between x squared and 4x is x. We factorize x. We take x squared divided by x, the result is x. How? X squared can be written as x multiplied by x. Then we are dividing by x. Then the x cancels, we remain with x. That's why x squared divided by x, the result is x. Also, we take 4x divided by x. At this point, x is common, cancels on the numerator and denominator, then we are left with 4. Then for the third term and fourth, what is common? The common value is -2. -2x divided by -2, the result is x. Then we take -8 divided by -2. When we simplify, 2 is 1, 2 into 8 is 4. The negative divided by negative, the result is positive. So we write +4 equal to 0. So at this point, we start by writing the repeated factor. The repeated factor is x plus 4. Then the other factor is x minus 2 equals to 0. So these are the linear factors. How do we find the value of x using these linear factors? To find the value of x, we use the null factor law. Using the null factor law, the first linear factor x plus 4 will be equal to 0, or the second linear factor x minus 2 is equal to 0. So what we do, we start with the first linear factor. If we pick the first linear factor x plus 4 is equal to 0, we make x the subject by subtracting 4 from both sides. So in this case, we shall have x plus 4 minus 4 equals to 0 minus 4. So x, on the left we remain with x, then on the right we have -4. Or, if we pick the second linear factor, which is x minus 2 is equal to 0, it implies that to find the value of x, we add +2 on both sides. On the left, we have x, because -2 plus 2 is 0. Then on the right, we have 0 plus 2, which is 2. Therefore, the solution to this particular equation is So the value of x is -4, or the value of x is +2. Let us now move on and evaluate part C. So from part B, we are now moving on to part C, which asks which of your two solutions is visible for the width of the rectangle. Remember, the width of the rectangle was x. So the first value of x we have established is x is -4. The second value of x we have established is x is 2. But between the two, x is -4 and x is 2, one is reasonable. One of the solution is reasonable, while the other solution is not reasonable. Which one is reasonable? That is what part C is asking. Which of your two solutions is visible for the width of the rectangle? So here we are looking at reasonable. So class, which one is reasonable? I believe you have discovered that x is equal to 2 is reasonable because the dimensions of a figure are always positive, and therefore the width is 2. So the reason, what is the reason? Class, what is the reason? The reason is the dimensions of a plane figure are always positive. The dimension of any plane figure is positive, and therefore we take x is equal to 2 to represent the width and ignore x is equal to -4, because dimension of a figure cannot be negative. So that is the solution for part C. Let us now look at part D of the same question. Now the question reads, write down the dimensions in brackets, width and length, close the bracket, of the rectangle. Now class, what is the dimension for width? You need to remember that we let the width to be x. So since x is 2, we have picked the positive value of x. So since x is equal to 2, we took the positive solution for that quadratic equation. Then it means the width, which was represented by x, will be equal to 2 centimeters. While the length, which is represented by x plus 2, will be equal to, when we carry out correct substitution, we shall have 2 plus 2. And that gives us that gives us 4 centimeters. So we can say the dimension for width is 2 centimeters, where the dimension for length is 4 centimeters. So you can say width is 2 centimeters, while length is 4 centimeters. Solved. We are saying centimeters because the area was square centimeters. So in our second illustration, we want to consider this example. A square picture is surrounded by a rectangular frame as shown. So there is a picture inside, and the dimensions of that picture is x centimeters. Because it's a square, it means this will be x centimeters, and also this side will be x centimeters, because we understand that for a square, all sides are equal. So this will also be x centimeters. Then the frame is rectangular. So that means the two sides are equal. Now, class, what is the dimensions for length? The length. So in this case, we need to know that the dimension for length will be the 8 centimeters plus x centimeters plus 8. Then the width will be, we take six centimeters plus the square part which is x plus the 6. So the question is, a square picture is surrounded by a rectangular frame as shown. So there's a rectangular frame. The total area is to be 320. So that means if we get the area, the total area of this, the whole of that figure is 320 square centimeters. Find the side length of the picture. So we need to find the value of x because the length of that picture is x, the width is x. So if we want to find the side length of that picture, we shall only find the value of x. We know that area is equal to 320 square centimeters. That is the total area. Total area. T for total. Now we need to identify or recall the formula used to calculate area of a rectangle. Since the frame is rectangular. So area of a rectangle is given by the formula length times width. Length times width is equal to area. Our length here is the length is 8 plus 2x plus 8. If we simplify, 8 plus 8 is 16. And we have x. So we have x plus 16. Then the width. The width of the rectangle will be 6 plus x plus the 6 part here. Then we simplify, we shall have 6 plus 6 is 12 plus x. So that gives us x plus 12. Since the area is in square centimeters, it means our dimensions will be in centimeters. Now, having known the length and width expression, we can now go ahead and substitute in our formula for area. Where there is length, we substitute with x plus 16. Multiply by where there is width, we substitute with x plus 12. Equals area, which is 320 square centimeters. Now, at that point, we expand expand the bracket, that means we open the bracket. On the left-hand side. So in expanding, we take x, multiply by x plus 12, plus 16, multiply by x plus 12. Equals to 320. X times x is x squared. X times 12, 12x. 16 times x, 16x. What is 16 times 12, class? 2 times 2 is 12, carry 1. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1, 3. 6, 1, 2, 9. So we find that 16 times 12 is 192. So at this point, we collect the like terms so that we express our quadratic equation. It's a quadratic because the highest power is 2 in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So to do that, we need to collect the like terms. So in this case, we collect 320 to the left-hand side so that we remain with a 0 on the right-hand side. So what do you do to remain with a 0 on the right-hand side? You subtract 320 from both sides because it is positive. Then 12x plus 16x is a 28. What is 192 minus 320? (192 minus 320 is 128 if you use your calculators. Then the final equation, quadratic equation, is x squared plus 28x minus 128 is equal to 0. So at this point, we now employ the knowledge of factorization technique. That means we need to split the middle term. And to do that, we look for two numbers such that the product is negative 128, which is the C part, because the coefficient of x squared is 1. So 1 times negative 128 is negative 128. Then the sum is 28. We can use inspection or try and error method to find those factors whose product is negative 128 and whose sum is 28. So, negative 128 can be obtained by taking, for example, let us start with a number like 10 times or we can take we can be able to establish those factors using inspection. We start with the 2. And 2 is negative. 3 cannot. We can go to 4. 128 divided by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2, 32. So we discover that negative 4 and 32 are the required factors. So we can say are factors of 128, and the sum, when you add them, negative 4 plus 32, you get the result as 28x. So that means that by trial and error, the factors are negative 4 and 32. Because when you add negative 4x plus 32x, the answer is 28x. So instead of now having 28x, we now express it using the two factors, 32x and negative 4x. So in this case, we shall have x squared plus 32x minus 4x minus 128 is equal to 0. Remember, we have just expressed 28x using 32x minus 4x. Now, class, factorize this particular equation, quadratic equation, by grouping. If we factorize by grouping, we shall first of all deal with the first two terms. So if we factorize by grouping, that's what we shall have. And the first one, what is common between the first two? X is common. So we take x squared divided by x, as we did earlier, we say is x. 3x divided by x and x cancels, we are remaining with 32. But now let me show how we obtain x squared divided by x. X squared divided by x is the same as xx over x. X cancels, you remain with x. So that's why we are saying x is common. X squared divided by x is x from this particular illustration. If we take 32 here, x is again common. So we take 32 divided by x. We take 32x divided by x. X cancels. We remain with 32. So that's why we are having 32 here. So between negative 4x and negative 128, what is common? The common value is negative 4. Then we take negative 4x divided by negative 4. Negative 4 and 4 cancels. We remain with positive x. Then next, we take negative 28 divided by negative 4. Sorry, we take negative 128 divided by negative 4. So negative cancels. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we have positive 32 is equal to 0. So at this point, identify repeated factor. So the repeated factor is x plus 32, and the other factor will be x minus 4 is equivalent to 0. So at this point, we now apply the null factor law. So applying the null factor law, it implies that x plus 32 will be equivalent to 0, or x minus 4 will be equivalent to 0, will be equal to 0. So at that point, we pick the first linear factor, then find the value of x. What will be the value of x? To obtain the value of x, subtract 32 from both sides. On the left-hand side, we are left with x. On the right-hand side, we have 0 minus 32, which is minus 32. So that's the first value of x. Or, if we pick the second linear factor, x minus 4 is equal to 0. To find the value of x, what do? We add 4 on both sides. If we add 4 on both sides, the left-hand side, we shall remain with x. Then on the right-hand side is 0 plus 4, which is 4. So basically, we have two values of x. Now, out of these two values of x, out of the two solutions, two values are, so these are just values, they are not solutions first. The first value of x is negative 32, and the second value of x is 4. But now, looking at the question was find the side length of the picture. Find the side length of the picture. So out of the two solutions, we let the side length of that picture to be x centimeters. was x centimeters. So what will be the correct visible solution for the side length of the picture? Between the two solutions, x is negative 32 and x is equal to 4, the reasonable solution for the side length of the picture is x is equal to 4 centimeters, since dimension of our plane figure is always positive. So we ignore the negative. Ignore the reason. The reason is the dimension of our plane figure cannot be negative. We can say hence or therefore. The hence or therefore the side length of the picture is 4 centimeters. So that's how we solve questions involving area, which requires to apply the knowledge of quadratic equations in solving. Let us now look at another situation where you have a word problem in real life situation, which also applies quadratic equation. So we want to extend that knowledge to other word problems other than area problems. So the question, in this case, we want to apply the knowledge of quadratic equation to other word problems. For example, the product of a number and two more than the same number is 48. Write an equation and solve to find the two possible solutions. So what do you do in this case? The first step we need to do or to carry out is to assign a letter to the number. So we can let So we are going to define a variable, this number. So we define it as x. So let the number be x. So the product of a number, if that number is x and two more than the same number. So two more than the same number, it means will be equivalent to the number is x, then two more than the same number means we are adding 2. So plus 2. So the product of this, x and x plus 2 is 48. product is so the product will be x plus 2 into brackets times x equals to 48. So at this point, we can be able to expand the bracket. X multiplied by x is x squared. 2 times x is plus 2x equals to 48. Now, at that point, we are supposed to write our equation in standard form of a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So here we shall have x squared plus 2x minus 48 is equal to 0 because we need to collect 48 to the left-hand side. Because it's positive, we subtract 48 from both sides. So we shall have x squared plus 2x minus 48 is equal to 48 minus 48. So we shall have so this simplifies to x squared plus 2x minus 48 is equal to 0. So this is the equation. This is the required equation. That is part A. Then part B, solve to find the two possible solutions. So this is part A. Part B, solving so to solve this quadratic equation, we need to first of all split the middle term, which is 2x, by choosing two factors using trial and error. So by inspection, we need to get product of two numbers, which will give us negative 48. Then the sum of those two factors should give us 2. What are these factors whose product is negative 8? So to find those factors, we use inspection or a try and error. So negative 48 is the same as 6 times 8. But for it to be negative, then 6 should be negative, or negative 8 should be negative. But we pick the first one because when you add, you are supposed to get what? 2. So when you add, on adding negative 6x plus 8x, the result is 2x. So it means the only factors are a negative 6x and 8x. So we take those factors. So it means x squared, instead of 2x, we use the two factors. We start with a positive 8x minus 6x minus 48 is equal to 0. So we have split 2x using the factors 8x and 6x, negative 6x. Class, what is common between the first two terms? Between the first two terms, x is common, and therefore we factorize x. So we shall have x. 8x squared divided by x is x. 8x divided by x is 8. Then between negative 6x and negative 48, what is common? The common factor is negative 6. So negative 6 divided by negative 6. Negative cancels, we remain with x. Then we pick negative 48, divide by negative 6. The result is positive 8, which is equal to 0. So at this point, we start with we identify the first linear factor, which is repeated, x plus 8, into the other factor, x minus 6, equal to 0. So using the null factor law, x plus 8 will be equal to 0, or x minus 6 is equal to 0. This is x plus 8. So if we pick the first linear factor, is equal to 0, we can be able to find the value of x by subtracting 8x from both sides. So on the left-hand side, we have x plus 8 minus x, which is x. Then on the right, we have 0 minus 8, which is negative 8. So the first one, value of x is negative 8. What is the second value of x? We use the second linear factor, or x minus 6 is 0. To find the value of x, you add 6 on both sides. So on the left, we shall remain with x minus 6 plus 6, which is x, because minus 6 plus 6 is 0. So on the left, we have x. On the right is 0 plus 6, which is 6. Therefore, we answer the question by saying the solutions are x is negative 8, or x is 6. But the question was, solve to find the two possible solutions. So you can say the two possible solutions here, you can say, therefore, the two possible solutions are x is equal to negative 8 and x is equal to 6. That is a way of solving quadratic equations involving word problems and also involving area problems. That marks the end of our lesson. Thank you.